Hello and welcome to Question and Answer Time. I'm Michael Sidgwick, joined by fellow Dadley boy Michael Hamflett to do precisely that, answer all your burning wrestling questions. But before we get into it, if you're a fan of this sort of thing, make sure to subscribe to WhatCulture Wrestling on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, and YouTube for daily wrestling podcasts, where we preview and review Raw, SmackDown, the show formerly known as NXT 2.0. Dynamite, Collision, pay-per-views, premium live events. We answer your wrestling questions. We have roundtable discussions. We interview wrestlers on occasion, and we host a roundup of the week, complete not this week, with a bloody good quiz, of course, on wrestle culture. Not this week. Yeah, I'm sure you'll manage. Hamflett, how are we doing today?
Buzzing. It's Friday.
So which two gigs have you got this weekend?
I've not got two gigs, Sitch. I've got every gig, because I'm going to be enjoying the BBC's world-beating coverage of Glastonbury from the comfort of my sofa. The festival that I have kind of made peace with never attending, from this awakening I had about, well, I want to say it was about 3-4 years ago. It can't have been 5 years ago, because that was a Pando, and that was at the saddest of like, I might never go to that. Yeah. And it came back, and we're here in the north, and like poor compared to our southern counterparts, and Glastonbury is an expensive time if you're travelling from up here. And I was watching a headline set, and I can't remember who it was, but it was a Friday night. It was about 11 o'clock. It had just wrapped. It had been really good. And then the camera, they had like a helicopter camera looking down on everybody. And I thought of what it would be to be in that first 5 rows.
Or a drone.
Maybe a drone.
It's a helicopter camera. Sounds very Yada.
He's right, yeah. I was messaging someone on my mobile telephone, and I looked down onto the screen and saw a helicopter camera. And I was thinking like sort of somebody in the 4th or 5th row. I'm thinking they're going to be waiting like 2 hours to get out of that crowd. Mm-hmm. And then Glastonbury, you are always told, is the biggest and best. Phil Chambers is there today. Shout out, Phil, if you're using your very generous data allowance on account of working for WaterAid to watch this podcast. He won't be. We're having too good a time. And he wouldn't watch even if he was just anywhere. The idea of getting through that crowd and then getting anywhere else for the rest of your night, when all I had to do was get up and go into the kitchen to get like a cup of tea or whatever it was I was wanting to go to the kitchen for. I was like, I just let it go. Yeah. Like the actual, it doesn't happen with me a lot in most of the things. I still want to go to gigs till I'm dead. I still want to go see live wrestling till I'm dead. I am Mr. America.
Yeah.
However, Glastonbury, that was the moment where I was like, you know what, this coverage is amazing. I can press the button and watch like 5 different stages. Yeah. I can see it all.
Yeah.
I've seen everything.
I
really did make my peace.
I've done Leeds Festival, an outdoor camping 4 nights, including the day you travel down. We did a 5 once.
Oh, when they started doing the
got there
Thursday
super
pre-parties.
early, and then the idea was there were people like friends of friends coming up from Essex, and we put the tents up for them, and then the next day was like, nothing. Oh God, it was awful. The actual time was fun, but I did Leeds Festival 2004, 5, and 6, and then 2010 for like a reunion of sorts. I am the sort of person who cannot imagine showering at night ahead of going to work. I need to feel like clean.
Yep.
At certain weekend days where I'm doing nothing, no plans to leave the house, I will sometimes just have a shower just because I like to feel clean, and I don't feel right if I'm like after a shower. The idea of the hygiene element of a festival just not being as it is at home, for example, is awful. So I didn't want to do Glastonbury. We will answer your burning wrestling questions imminently. The best compromise I've ever done was 2012. Went to Primavera. Mm-hmm. It's usually in Barca, but they did a Porto leg. So we went to the Porto one. But it was 3 days, outdoor festival, but we just left, went back to the hotel, woke up, shower, breakfast,
I'm that guy now.
lunch, and then you just feel refreshed.
Yeah.
Because what annoyed me as well, not just the feeling of, is like, it had long hair at the time, more of it, and I would have to wear it under a cap because I just couldn't handle like dry shampoo. I've got very fine hair, gets very greasy very quickly, all over the place. Looking at these people who could be in like the cover of NME in a Strokes rip-off band on the Sunday, still looking the business. It's like, oh God, I hate this.
How dare you?
I hate you.
Oh yeah, to this day, still do UK festivals like that.
Yeah.
I only camped when peer pressure and money pressure meant I had to, and being young enough to just manage it.
Yeah.
Get up and not feel dead for the next day and not be able to walk without looking like Kurt Angle circa 2019. Leeds and transmit up in Glasgow, just like back to the premiering.
Yeah.
Start again the next day. You feel like you're getting all the bands you want, you're getting all the drink in the field you want, but home to a bed.
Beach House M83
shellac.
Nice. Beach House M83 shellac.
God, that's a very specific era.
Yeah, who else did I see there? Saw Suede. Did I see the War on Drugs? Saw some great bands.
It's a good lineup, yeah.
Loads of them. Loads of them. But yeah, the good thing about that festival is that you went back to your hotel, and then you started all over again. You didn't have to pitch a tent.
No.
On the subject of pitches, the bearded booker has one himself. Pitch, : Swerve Strickland costs Hangman the title at All In. He just can't bring himself to let their rivalry go. Monster heel turn for Swerve. Reignite that awesome rivalry. Would you like to see it? As ever, I'll answer, and I'll hand over to Hamflett to answer it. When I read this, I went, I quite like that, One, I don't think anyone would see it coming.
Mm-hmm.
Two, we've discussed at length over the course of, since the Death Rider started and we didn't want it to keep going. Surely just put it on a babyface, pivot, it's bad. The babyface selection headache of Will Ospreay, Swerve Strickland, Darby Allin, Hangman Page. And then you got Kenny Omega lurking. You kind of need a top heel in this promotion because people won't want Moxley after this. I think, we'll go into a question later on about whether all this is justified. But we need a top heel and like a major name at that, if for no other reason than to just gently reorganize your hierarchy and to make matches. I think, however, I don't know who I would pick. Not Ospreay, not Swerve, obviously not Hangman, not Darby. So what do you do? I think Swerve might be the closest, purely because he's had that world title more recently than Hangman, than Ospreay and Darby, who've never actually held it at time of recording. I do like the idea of them completely subverting the Avengers thing. It's consistent with my thoughts of we need more hatred and animosity and personal issues drawing money. And I love the twist of after all this, all those teasers, he just can't do it, reigniting the hatred.
Especially because Hangman was going to do it.
Yes.
So it's established that this isn't a two-way thing anymore. It's Swerve with the chip on his shoulder.
Yeah.
Hangman was ready to
reconcile.
Hookshot Moxley.
So I do like it for all those reasons. However, it doesn't seem to be what the audience wants, and 9 times out of 10, you should really try and do that, especially when this sort of comeback is still a bit tentative. A lot of people are still not quite all the way there with it. And another reason is that after the cage match last year, which was a better scene than match, I don't need to see them replicate what they did in that cage match at All Out last year. I'd rather see them just shake hands, reconcile, maybe even tag against the Bucks or something at All Out or Full Gear. I'd rather see them together than apart, even though I think this pitch, which is knocked as daft because I'd never even considered it, is when you consider everything, the hierarchy, it's actually quite inspired.
I really like it, and I think this is not necessarily analysing the fiction, although it sort of is. If this was the finish, I would admire the guts and the ambition of the booking. I would think to myself, AEW really are in a good place, because that is a bold move at a time when I don't think you're risking alienation because fans are super invested in Swerve and Hangman of the Tree, IMO. But if you, as a result, continue that in a direction nobody would have expected, I don't think this is not like Austin killing the town and territory at WrestleMania 17, for example. It's an entirely new avenue that you didn't expect to go down, and you want to go down it. So I don't think you're losing anyone. I don't think there's a risk of alienation. What I would say, and I've referenced this a few times, it is another reason that I did not want to know that Hangman and Ospreay's finish wasn't decided going up to the week of the show.
Yeah.
Because if I never knew that, then I would think this was always a grand plan. And with a grand plan, because something as spectacular as this grand twist, but up to the week of Double or Nothing, we were all predicting an Ospreay win and Swerve and Hangman having to take on the Young Bucks, and the story would have been they can't even stand the sight of each other, let alone be a tag team against, and that would have been the move.
Yeah.
So we wouldn't have even been having this conversation. You know, that Swerve turns on Hangman. They would have just now been the strange bedfellows. We would be living in that bit of the world. So I don't think we're getting it, but only on those terms.
Yeah.
That, as I say, a month ago, it still feels like it could have been Ospreay, and they've gone with, it's why they've worked so hard at this. You know, Ospreay, it wasn't out of nowhere. That would be unfair. But he did turn the volume up on, I'd do anything for you, bruv. I was like, would you? Okay. Like, you mates. And I know that about you.
I mean, they are legitimately very close friends who've came up together in the business.
But on screen, it didn't even feature that much when they were in that feud for the title last year.
Yeah.
They turned the volume up on that to make it feel authentic in time for this Young Bucks tag and the singles match, and that I would take a bullet for you. And, like, they've done a really nice job with this. But I still think maybe it's plan B. And it was going to be Hangman and Swerve teaming versus the Bucks and Ospreay beating Moxley, and now we've got to where we've got to. So that's the only reason I don't think it would happen, but I think it would show real guts and real ambition to do so. And to your point about the amount of baby faces, this is the scenario in which I think you can justify a Hangman loss, because the line of baby faces, the potential gauntlet winner, returning stars that we're going to get to elsewhere, they're not short on that person that beats Moxley.
Yeah.
But if you're going to have Hangman not do it, I think this is the only avenue of failure.
Yeah.
You couldn't just have like the Death Riders running.
Yeah.
It'd have to be this.
Yeah, absolutely. So in summary, I guess, I really quite like it, and it would solve AEW's imminent heel problem, but it's not what the audience wants. They are desperate to see this reunion, and it should. And I've got faith in the moment. I really do. Mm-hmm. So I would say no, but very, very, very good pitch. Iris says, who wins the G1 this year? Well, we don't often get the opportunity to speak about New Japan. I get plenty of opportunities to watch New Japan, but I choose not to take them because realistically, that company, I follow it from afar. There are things that, and it's just, am I lazy, or is it just so easy to a day later go, oh, that match that got raves? Yeah, there's another one on Dynamite this week. So it is hard. And when you're not completely up to date with or emotionally interested in the characters in New Japan Pro Wrestling, matches are just matches at this point. But why not use this as an excuse, this question, to talk about what would bring us back, or who should win, or is there anyone in New Japan or any development that makes me want to? I've said before, I love this world so much. I love the way that the cards are structured. It really hits that live sporting broadcast that is filmed versus produced show thing that I go on about with AEW quite a lot. Like, if New Japan was full of stars, great stories against that backdrop within that framework, it would probably be my favorite promotion. I just love the aesthetics. I love the production, the presentation. Like, every time basically Kenny Omega comes back to do something, I love him in that world. He belongs in that world. That is the best wrestling world for me. And then I just stop caring when I watch other things. I don't know who they're even pushing, if anyone. Realistically, you heard a lot of talk about Shota and Tsuji. And
they are in different blocks.
Yeah, and then more recently, Gabe Kidd. The idea that we need to pile the pressure on this one savior figure, and have any of them shown enough? No. Shota Umino at this year's Wrestle Kingdom, which I did watch in the end. Oh my God. No. It's just not happening. He just doesn't have the intangibles or that magnetism of a top star. Tsuji looks the part, but I think a lot of it was bargaining on his behalf, that because he had the good facials and because he worked to a really good level, I think a lot of people were really prepared to see something in him that possibly that substance wasn't quite there. Gabe Kidd, it was seeming like he could do that, not just because they're both English, but that ZSJ. He's not the future ace, but he's a good sort of gatekeeper for a little bit, or a nice little story there. I don't know, it just hasn't seemed to work for him either. He's not capitalized on that assist of a Kenny Omega match at Wrestle Kingdom.
He's got a belt, hasn't he?
They've all got belts.
Yeah.
They've all got belts. So basically, the short answer to the question is, I really don't know. And at this point as well, like, because they've done such a poor job of promoting new talent with conviction, and everything I see from afar again about New Japan is this House of Torture stuff. Like, I was listening to the Voices of Wrestling flagship, and they were completely stumped like we are, and they watch it religiously, every major show. They watch it religiously, and they still don't know who they should be invested in. They still don't know who's got it. They still don't know who should get the chance. They have determined that, you know what, considering how heavy they are still going on House of Torture, which, if you don't know anything about New Japan, is basically everything you hated about the Death Riders before this minor resurgence, magnified by 1,000.
Yeah.
Just relentless heat. They're thinking, well, it's probably going to be evil, especially with the babyface champion Goto, who is, you know, I realize people have strongly connected to that story, and it's nice that it's happening, and it does feel like a little bit of the flicker of that old resurgent New Japan flame. Ultimately, for me, from afar, it's like you're getting 4.5s out of Goto every big show, and it's like, well, what's a 4.5 anymore? The thing is, after cycling through the old combinations for so long and so often, they did try with Umino last year, and it was a disaster.
Yeah.
I don't know. Every time someone says, oh, New Japan did a show that's better than they've been doing, we could be back. It's a similar principle to AEW, even though I'm more advanced. I'm closing in on the AEW feeling. We've firmed up the offer. Varies to the football transfer cliches. With New Japan, because I've been burned from gently stepping back into the world and thinking there's no stars here and there's no stories and the booking's completely oppressive. If people start saying, oh, we could be back, I'll go, right, okay, I'll see you in 6 months. And if you're still saying that, I'll really start to watch like your Dominions and stuff like that. But for now, what a sad end.
Well, the level of it's so over, way so back. Cliche being true with New Japan is tragic, isn't it? Like, just to view the conversation from afar, and it is from afar, the amount of times one good show seems to capture people's imagination who are, and I get this, who are desperate to feel it again. To paraphrase old Roddy Piper, like, rather than having the answers, should we change the questions here? Like, what does a G1 winner represent in 2026? Because we're going into the Wrestle Kingdom title match. I'm a bandwagon New Japan fan, so 2016 to 2020 were my deep investment years. And then with the pandemic, pretty much brought about my loss of interest out. And this is the thing, outside of who was like a common denominator wrestler, someone like a Will Ospreay, because you had to.
Yeah.
And then sure enough, he jumps. And then it's like, well, like, I kind of didn't mind the Arso Licata run, and then he jumps. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
I love that, actually. I thought that was great.
The names that you might draw you back in to watch our segment or our match, then leave as well. And it's just, so I don't know. I've got like the lineup in front of me, but some of them are names I'm familiar with. Some of them are matches. Some of them are wrestlers I've seen them wrestle once. But I don't know now if we're in this cycle of when New Japan was hot, the G1 winner, you could then map so much booking off the back of that winner. I'm looking at this roster, and it doesn't feel like you can just magically make someone. This year's Wrestle Kingdom feels like evidence of it, right? So is the answer to just set up a main event and forecast who might be the champion for that main event? Like, I'm looking at, right, so like Zack Sabre Jr. won a G1. It was very warmly received. Didn't even wait for Wrestle Kingdom to get his title shot. Wins the title, gets this push. But you weren't watching thinking...
The business was actually shocking, apparently.
He's not going to be this, like, you know, like 5 years at the top of the card guy. And Goto feels more of a sentiment thing, so you're always thinking, well, so he's not it either.
Yeah.
You cannot try again with, well, I mean, you can do what you want, but like, if you're trying again with someone like an Evil or a Sonata in these top spots, well, these are like profound...
The fashion monster.
Failures, right? So you can't really go down that route again. So then you do look to, and you've had you go with Shota Umino, so you do look to maybe like a Gabe Kidd. I'm looking here. Tsuji is as untainted as you're going to get. But even then has had this like feeling of, it's not going to be him either, is it? It's so difficult to imagine not just who wins this and who gets the title shot of Wrestle Kingdom, but what that's even supposed to represent. If you're President Tanahashi, are you looking at this with the, I want to make a guy overnight, or are you thinking, We're 5 years from getting hot again.
Yeah.
And I need to remember what that felt like when I was in that spot. So I might just leave this on Goto for a while. I've already been sentimental enough to give him his title. Why don't I give him his G1 as well?
Yeah.
And just let this ride until someone somewhere gets hot, until somebody comes out of the dojo that I actually see it in. Because that was Tanahashi's job, wasn't it? He was the one guy, and everything else had to rebuild around him. So maybe he's got to pick a name and accept that they're not going to bring 30, 40,000 people back to the Hague for years.
Yeah,
it's not the most
Tanahashi's retiring there, so they might get a house, but I mean that's completely temporary.
It's not business turning around, is it? You know, like
the short answer to this: give it Tsuji to the end of the season.
Yeah,
why not? But there are 4 types of New Japan wrestler. There is the rapidly aging, been there forever, hard to be interested in, still great on their day. Goto, Ishii, I think even Shingo's entering that bracket as well, realistically. You have got...
Sorry to cut you off, because I think it's worth dwelling on this for a second. These appearance stats on the very helpful Wikipedia page for the G1 Climax 35 are reading like those 20-year WWE runs like Dolph Ziggler. 7th appearance in the G1 for Shingo, 10th appearance for Evil, 18th appearance for Goto, 10th appearance for Sonata. There's some 4th and 3rd, and there's 1 debutant in Drilla Maloney. If Kojima gets in for this play-in tournament, they've got that be his 16th. Same again with Tomohiro Ishii, that'd be his 12th appearance. These are Dolph Ziggler runs.
You've got the Dolph Ziggler bracket. You have got the young, meant to be changing the complexion of the company, new Three Musketeers bracket of these new stars who just aren't catching fire. You've got out and out duds as well. And then you've got the previous generation of people who were going to make it and never did, like Sonata. Like, it is just barren. And it's a tricky thing. Like, AEW, yes, has made moves that are gearing towards, in the eyes of many, like a proper resurgence. But New Japan shares similar problems that we've talked about at length on these podcasts over the last 2 or 3 years, where the standard set was simply so high that so much feels like, this again, but not as good. Like, a problem, I said, like with AEW, was almost too good for its own good. Too good for its own good. They set a standard that they can now really struggle to live up to. I think over time, and every booker does this in their own specific quirks and likes, but Ghetto doing those, right? Everything's going in a minimum 30 minutes. They should have knocked that on the head when people first started talking about that. Let's do some 20-minute matches instead of the 30s and 40s that were relentless. Like this, the All Japan problem and the New Japan problem. And because I don't know what you do. All I will say in closing is that it's a testament to how good New Japan was at that 2010s peak. Because, my God, we're still talking about it in these really now archaic terms of, could we go back? This company's been, some great highlights aside, declining since 2020. That is 5 years ago. That's longer than the Attitude Era, you know, like way longer. It's just wild and sad. Speaking of sad, No asks us, and I'm not even going to talk about this. This is a Hamflett question, in fairness. It's a good one as well. Why do WWE fans think The Miz is a good wrestler?
I really like this question, and I did see it ahead of time, and I came up with 2 answers, because one of them is using sports as an analogy, but I appreciate sports isn't for everybody, so I've got a second one coming up. If sports isn't really a thing, we use football quite a lot, but I think this wider... Please do. If you, it won't feel right in your brain, will it, unless we...
Sports Tange.
So this is a sports tange. I've been defensive of the stance of late on these podcasts that I actually think it is okay to treat brands as sports teams. We can all sort of root for wrestlers while still realistically preferring them wrestle on a night of the week or for 3 specific letters. Might never have come across in these podcasts, but Sidge kind of leans AEW.
Yes.
And I kind of lean WWE. We kind of hide our lights under bushels.
Yes.
But if you've ever peered behind those bushels, you might see those lights, right? And that's I could be wearing red and white stripes, there's black and white stripes. It's how we roll, and we can, guess what, we can all still get along.
Yeah.
But we can't like those teams the same. That's not how that works.
No.
So I do believe a little bit in this sports team thing is actually a normal way to follow your pro wrestling. And The Miz is something that if you follow a sports team, you might debate in the pub or in your fan circles the individual value of a player on a day, but you kind of admire that they'll D out. Like a utility left winger that is prepared to move to left back because you've signed a much more appealing left winger in football, for example. And then all of a sudden, like your centre half goes down injured. It's like, can you do that for us? Because you're 30 and you're the most experienced player we've got. And they just do.
Yeah.
And they're coming up on the testimonial year and you're like, yeah, if push came to shove, I'd want to move you on. But sentiment goes a long way in sports. And as a WWE fan, I think there is an element of this with The Miz. He is not, I have a certain amount of sentimental attachment to The Miz because I saw him cash in person. That does something to him. Makes me feel some kind of way. However, when he did cash in, he happened to cash in off the back of probably the best 6 to 8 months of his career. There was definitely a point where it was like WWE, and ultimately it's a mark on WWE that it was so barren that it was like, Miz cuts half decent promos. Do you want to give him the belt and see how that goes? Like there was genuinely that move of, well, he's got the briefcase and he's a good talker.
There's no one else.
There's nobody else.
Other than CM Punk. Infamously did not take kindly to being looked over.
Indeed,
course.
Right? But definitely got over it straight away. Never held that grudge for like 10, 15 years. Probably does to this day. But like, he was enough. The Miz was enough. And if your sports team is WWE in this wrestling context, The Miz being able, so willingly as well, by the way, to just like drop into left back, as it were, or like go from being this baby face. You know what? R-Truth's taking a bit of a beating off the Judgment Day. I'll be a mate. R-Truth. Good on you, Miz. You've been a heel for all this time, but like you remember this thing with R-Truth, and why not? And then just be like, you need me to be an absolute clown, I'll be a clown. You need me to endorse Carmelo Hayes. Is it working? No, but I'll try. I'll put like, I like watching and continue to like watching, because the question is, do you think he's a good wrestler? I don't.
He's awful.
I don't think The Miz is a good wrestler.
One of the most fundamentally awful wrestlers of his or any other generation.
Yeah, it's never about the wrestling.
He never looks like he's going to hurt someone ever.
I have such an appreciation for his utility man skills that it is divorced from the fiction.
So he's James Purge.
If you want, yeah.
Aaron Hughes.
Equally niche to go Sunderland. Kieran Richardson. Currently a Luke 09. This is irrelevant to so many of you, but you've got your basketball and your football, and you will know a utility player. Often somebody that might play for a long time, so loyalty becomes a thing. And I'm somebody that quite likes my loyalty, often at the expense of quality, which again doesn't jive with every fan, but I do think it speaks to a lot of WWE fans. I think sometimes a lot of WWE fans
feeds into the outcry about R-Truths.
Yep. Yeah, who isn't particularly my
release,
guy
if you like,
all the time, but a perfect recent example, yeah. So I think that is it. And to bring it away from the sporting analogy, it's come up a lot lately, and I think it's typically when we're talking about Steve Austin, but there are others. Bret Hart had his 3 categories. I like the top trumps analogy, where it's like, you see, you can make your own categories up, but you can divide it into, say, 5 or 6 categories, and it's like how many out of 10. If there was a category for wrestler that just, he'll D out, Miz is a 10. And there's actually, when you really think about it, there's not many 10s in wrestling that drop into that. He'll D out.
Yeah.
Cody Rhodes is pretty close. But Stardust nearly killed him.
Yes.
The Miz would do 3 years of Miz dust and just be like, yeah, this has been fine. What you got for me now? Like, I admire that. I genuinely have an admiration for The Miz that I can't reconcile with almost anything else, because he has his fancy mansion and cars and he loves that, and that holds no weight with me. I'm not impressed by the Miz.
You're not one of these Miz fans where he's seen the size of his wife's tits.
I'm not.
Who's winning?
I can't think of somebody that might be, but I'm certainly not one of those people. But I have this like real bone deep admiration for his ability
dresses Nikki Bella
to just D out. And let it be remembered as often as you can, right, that he's a bit of the worst locker room of all time survivor. Him.
Yeah.
The Miz. The spiky haired. Hoorah! Hoorah! Like, endured that locker room and left a legacy 10 times bigger than half of them. And I like that for him. Something about like the fact that like, The Miz versus one of those SmackDown bullies, and he's going to get out of wrestling relatively injury-free and wadded and content and not with this ego and this grim masculinity just coming out of his every pause, JBL. Like just Undertaker. Miz.
Bob Holly.
Some people, and this is going to be so funny one day when it happens.
Other names you can't mention.
Are going to do like sort of 10 years are going to pass. It's going to be like, the LFG season 10. Right, you know, hey kid, you got the potential to be a WWE legend, such as the Undertaker, such as the Miz, and it'll make the Undertaker sick that the Miz is included in that list. And I love that. The Miz Punk thing. We've discussed this. It's been one of my favorite little wrestling kinks.
Yeah.
That he could never get over. That it was the Miz. There are so many
that contract signing they do where Miz gets him and Punk's like, no, not him.
All you are MJ. All I'm saying is MJF is you're a less famous Miz, but I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Like, I love that. There's not any kind of wrestler that probably hasn't been gotten to by the success of him. The Miz. Who's going to get more cheers in a wrestling building in 2025? The Miz or Hulk Hogan? People are just like, I don't know.
I mean, that's it. Come on.
But what I'm saying is that like The Miz could have done all sorts of awful things with all the awfulness that he encountered and then has subsequently been privy to and been a part of. And he's just like, yeah, whatever. How'd they out me?
It's such a weird rationale.
How'd they out me? It's an irrational rationale.
You've got a weird brain.
It's
thanks to your question, I guess.
I think that, look, I'm trying to articulate why I think a lot of people will feel this way about The Miz, because what you've just said about his wrestling is correct. But
he's hopeless.
But if I was to say that doesn't matter, a lot of people would lose their heads and think that I'm just like denigrating this great sport.
I think it's one of those when I remember reading a review of the Phantom Menace that tried to go into this really sort of like deep dive into why it was good actually, where it's basically an exercise in making points as opposed to enjoying a film or praising it. But
I don't think the Miz is good actually.
No, he's crap.
I don't think he's good actually.
Absolutely hideous.
We should get across that.
Yeah, the next question comes from Kendrick. If Hangman hopefully wins the title, who should be his first challenge, and how can AEW build enough suspense in the following matches to keep fans invested and make the drama feel real? Right, I've got a couple of answers, a couple of thoughts, if you will, on this. You are up against it in a promotion like AEW for the first pay-per-view cycle, or maybe the second, because historically they've liked to book long title reigns. It's just something that Tony Khan likes to do, the idea of building the prestige of the title. Hangman was not one of them. He was not an MJF. He wasn't a Kenny Omega. He's not a Jon Moxley on both occasions. There's been quirks, obviously, but that's the general idea, all going well. People not, I don't know, just off the top of my head, being a stupid, egotistical dickhead and jumping into an audience and breaking their foot and changing the entire fabric of pro wrestling's future, just off the top of my head.
Worked out in the end.
All going well, he likes the long reigns, yeah? So you're going to struggle for 2 or 3 months to make interesting TV. Now, however, Hangman Page, because of the civil war within both AEW and Tony Khan's mind about what he wanted it to be and who's the main character. Is it the guy you've built as the main character, or is it the real biggest draw and all the rest of it? Hangman Page suffered that and had because it was a shorter calendar at the year, a 1 pay-per-view title. So he wins at Full Gear, defends against Adam Cole at Revolution, loses to Double or Nothing to Punk. And he has the TV matches with Danielson as well. That shouldn't be overlooked because they were incredible. But the general prevailing idea is that a mid-signing season, Punk, Danielson, AEW is so overwhelmingly great that you cannot really focus your attention on the guy who should be the focal point, being Hangman Page's champion. It's a bit meta. It's a bit, you weren't successful in the role you were booked to be, as opposed to, I hate you, and I'm going to come up with really interesting and vile ways to beat you up or to torment your psyche. So it's a bit more of that sort of self-aware-ish way of telling wrestling stories that I'm tiring of. but a very easy way to remind fans. And it's one of those where Hangman Page is a genius because he succeeds because he finds a million ways to fail and never be considered a loser. That's this unbelievable genius behind the Hangman Page character. And it's a bit tropey at this point, but I think for 5 years, 6 years on in this really prominent role, he's outstanding as being the guy who continually makes himself the most sympathetic and interesting and root-forable character in all of wrestling. You can mine that history and make a feature out of what was at the time a bug by having Kyle Fletcher, for example. I wish he wasn't winning the TNT title from Adam Cole. But just say he isn't, and it's the example in my head of Kyle Fletcher, right? Kyle Fletcher comes out on the Dynamite after All in Texas to go up to Hangman, challenge him, interrupt that promo, and if I'm booking it, I'm not putting Fletcher anywhere near the TNT title. I think he's better than that. Goes up to Hangman, is about to get on the mic and essentially cut some kind of promo saying, "I've done all this. I'm laying forth my case as a credible challenger for All Out or whenever the next one is, Wrestle Dream." And instead of doing that, just going up to Hangman Page and just smirking at him and leaving. You've got a hook then of like, what's he done that for? And Hangman Page is a bit rattled, calls him a dumbass, but he's kind of rattled, and then that's it for that week. Like, don't put all your eggs in one basket. I don't know, I just say things in voices now. It's my job. It's apparently what I'm paid to do. Then it's revealed Kyle Fletcher can say something. I've already taken you to the limit. I've already taken you to the limit when they had that fabulous match on Dynamite. And that's when you're on the chase, Hangman. That's when you're on the chase. And I took you to the limit when you were at your best, and that is when you can see success. Mm-hmm. You've never been able to cope with it. Look what happened the last time, Hangman. Your title reign was garbage. You folded under the pressure. And just mine the fact that the first reign did not go well, and sort of recontextualize it as a failure as a athlete as opposed to this sort of booking dilemma that Tony Khan underwent. And that's how I would do it. Remind people, oh God, yeah, the first reign wasn't very good. Now this character's reminding me of that fact. It's something, I guess, for the first phase of it.
Well, so I have some thoughts on this, and there's a question going to be wrapped up in here, but it'll be wrapped with waffle, so I apologize. Should we be looking at this differently? And not just because it's Hangman Page. And I want you to answer this question in a minute, but should we be looking at this differently, right? Because in AEW, do we need to look at it differently? But you know how you've been worried about the Avengers payoff to this for All In, right? If we take that as a relative like for like, or certainly Jon Moxley has a stranglehold similar to Roman Reigns, and Hangman has to stop it like Cody stopped it. In the booking of the Cody Rhodes title reign, a big point that I was trying to illustrate, I thought people were missing at the time, but I think it's a little bit, it's just the anti-Fed sentiment. We're like, they're putting him against him, and it's this idea that like the match might look crap on paper or whatever. Cody Rhodes only, in inverted commas, in a year-long reign, but only feuded strictly with AJ Styles, Solo Sikoa, and Kevin Owens, with little side quests such as teaming with Roman Reigns.
Few.
Which is why he had to work with Solo to fold Roman Reigns into Cody's world. Folding Roman into Cody's world brought Cody in line with Kevin Owens. So that was a purpose-serving thing.
Yeah.
But on paper, AJ Styles, Solo Sikoa, Kevin Owens not bad. But mainly because Kevin Owens is just this universally beloved wrestler.
Yeah.
Certainly if you're looking, there's bigger names or there's bigger stars, not to denigrate Owens, but there is. That title reign was epic in scale, because Cody Rhodes was the quarterback, to use AEW parlance, the main character, right? It wasn't necessarily about who he was facing. It was a test of his ability to be the champion, whatever you consider the champion to be. If you perceive that to be the leader of the brand, if you perceive it to be the best wrestler, whatever it was, it's this idea, this fiction that, it's not my job to worry about the Comas, but I'll take on all of them.
Yeah.
And it just happens that AJ Styles is a Coma. And then it's like, AJ Styles, but he's getting on a bit and he doesn't have great matches anymore. And then it's Cody's job to drag you into the story. Now, as it turns out, they had for my money, probably the best match of Cody's title run. But then either way, you come out with that story and Cody is enhanced a little bit as a champion because he's survived his first coma. Solo Sikoa at SummerSlam was a stinker, but I wasn't bothered because it was the folding in of Roman Reigns and it was Cody and Roman are back together for the first time. What's this going to look like? And because it was a means to an end and because that brought Cody to Kevin Owens' door, you're then viewing it all as the run of a champion. I guess the question I'm asking was, so that worked within the way that WWE and Triple H books especially. You could argue that Cody kind of dealing with the Owens problem was in service of the Owens-Sami Zayn thing, and that went off over there. And Cody finally had his, play it clear in time for Royal Rumble season and Elimination Chamber season, because that's when you're going to get your WrestleMania challenger. And he has to be done with it. He has to have his business conducted because he knows that a Rumble winner or an Elimination Chamber winner, in this case John Cena, is going to be wrestling him at WrestleMania. So you don't need a feud, you need a wrestler. And that's who you plug in there. Should AEW be looking at it this way? Because I feel like the tendency with AEW, and this is where my question comes in, is because it is where the best wrestling, because the matches matter more, when there is a new champion, there's this pressure to look at this massive roster of world-renowned pro wrestlers and go, him, this potential 5-star at Full Gear, this potential now monthly pay-per-views, 6 wrestlers, the 6 best, or the 6 wrestlers that present a potential 5-star match with Hangman Page at every pay-per-view. Is it necessary because it's AEW that we look at it that way? Or can we find the equivalent of an AJ Styles, Solo Sikoa, Kevin Owens, John Cena? That's it. That's an entire year's booking of a world champion. And what happened to Cody Rhodes in that year? He just became even more the quarterback. He became even more the guy. Hangman Page didn't become the guy first time. Does it have to be matches and opponents? Or can it be this idea of this champion that turns up to work? And can AEW, what I'm asking you, for the first time, can AEW book 6 separate Lance Archer TV feeds for Hangman Page? It doesn't have to be a Bryan Danielson every time. How good was the Lance Archer TV match?
No, it was incredible.
Nobody bought he was going to win the title. Did it matter by the end?
That's why Punk shouldn't have got it.
It was probably...
Hangman Page proved it right there and then.
It was probably the most secure and solidified Hangman Page felt as a champion when he defeated Lance Archer, yeah?
Yeah.
More so than when he beat Bryan, even though the matches were incredible.
Yeah.
Should this not be more about Hangman Page is the champion, who's the coma?
Yeah.
Don't worry about the coma. Worry about Hangman Page's status getting elevated and preserved in amber more. So when we're looking back on it a year later, it was like, that reign kicked ass. Who was he fighting again? I can't remember, but he was the man.
No, it should. I know the point you're trying to make of look at Austin. He just had dude love.
Vince's guys.
Over
and over again,
No, it's a really good point to make.
Does it work in AEW? I think that's the question.
Maybe.
Does it,
if you look at John Moxley's rule of opponents, can you really go back and think, I'd love to watch that match with Brian Cage again? No, I would not go back and watch it. It was probably some 8 minutes of aimless brawling and then a hot finish.
Yeah, that's a good point. That was a babyface run.
John Moxley had the character, he had the currency, he had the promo, he had that credibility. I don't know what the difference is. Has Hangman Page potentially leaned too far on this whole, I'm a failure and I kind of need you guys to pick me up, or I need to learn some life lessons along the way? Is the character not necessarily... he's the best chaser of the modern era. Is it going to take a radical rethink like you might have just laid out there? I don't know. I would potentially play with the idea of, as the first chapter of the reign, if in fact it happens, of someone like Kyle Fletcher. Look, even when you're a success, you're a failure, Hangman Page. That's how much of a goddamn failure you
Crown's
are.
too heavy for your fragile head, Hangman Page.
Proves, no, it's not Fletcher. It's a shame that WWE are doing this to Cena in the countdown, because of the countdown, whatever the number of days Hangman Page was.
That'd be good.
You're coming up to day 80. It's going to go wrong for you imminently, and you're in trouble.
Yeah,
you mess with Carl Fletcher. That day passes, and he just starts to become the guy, and you become acquainted with him as the guy, because it'll take. You have to recalibrate the way you think about Hangman Page, and it's AEW's job to do this. So you just think, oh no, he's just the champion now.
Could they hold off?
Some actual character progression is probably needed.
Could they hold off on MJF all the way that MJF is getting to the point where he's scared Hangman's going to break his record?
You hope so.
Could they go the whole year? Yeah. They brought them so close together that MJF feels sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
But it'd be cool if Hangman was creeping upon MJF's number, and Kenny having to try and stop MJF. MJF
can they make Hangman Page feel undeniable?
Yeah.
maybe they're going to have to, because people just think of him at this point as the guy they really want to see win, not this cocksure, ironically, cowboy who's like, I'll save the day, I'm the sheriff.
I love a babyface match with Kenny.
You know what I mean?
Love an all babyface title match with Kenny.
There's ways they can do it, but it might take a rethink of the character if they don't want to echo what happened to him last time around. WT says, if we all suddenly couldn't sneeze, how long would it take everyone to notice?
You'd be buzzing. That'd be like, that'd lift one of your.
I enjoy a good sneeze.
You enjoy one, but you don't like hearing other people's.
It's the coughing. It's this sniffle. It's when they sound like they're breaking wind through their nose and don't care enough to cover it. I'd feel like I get this red mist. I want to headbutt you for doing that next to me. The sneezes are fine. I don't know, a day.
I think longer.
About a week.
Yeah, I reckon a week. And it'd get reported, wouldn't it? Somebody would tweet it. You sneeze much lately?
Yeah.
And then a bunch of replies would go mega viral.
And then people like ripping their nose hairs out or sniffing pepper.
Looking at the lights. When they can feel one coming and it just never happens.
Sneezes are awesome. The actual question is, I do worry about how long we're going to spend on this and how to the point we're going to be. Do you think stars turn cold in AEW way quicker than in WWE because of the culture of the fandom? And does it work in the reverse? I don't think it does. I don't think so either. I don't know how to explain this without being cynical, so I'm just going to be cynical. Stick to what you know. Stick to what you know. I've talked about this to in incredulous tones. People still talk about the Miz's Talking Smack promo from 2016. It was 9 years ago. The same distance between, I don't know, Hogan wrestling Warrior and Warrior being out of the mainstream business for good.
Mm-hmm.
Right? People still talk about it. When Natalya had that one good match, it could have been 2024. Bloody hell, that was great, wasn't it? I think WWE is genuinely much, much better at brainwashing its audience. And if you want to use a kind of turn of phrase, much better at just simply promoting their talents as stars as AEW. Like,
maximizing the value of one moment over needing 10.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The machine is set up to do that. Yeah.
And along similar lines, and this is a point I make often, I think I made it literally earlier on this very podcast, AEW is often too good for its own good and does too many cool things, and you just get spoiled by them. Like, Paul Levesque's creative philosophy is just carefully doling out these exciting moments. Very stingy as a booker. Look at some of these PLE cards are absolutely bobbins, but the big moments seem to stand out more, and they promote the hell out of them. I do think a lot of the psychology of the WWE audience, maybe they're a lot more emboldened now in that they had to suffer through Vince's twilight years slop for so long that anything's so great compared to it. There's a lot that goes into this question. And again, it's probably the booking and promoting prowess or lack thereof on the part of Vince, Levesque, Tony Khan. Like, I don't know.
Do you know why the stinginess doesn't feel stingy from Triple H? I'll give you a reason why, as somebody that like lives it and likes it, is because he signposts the big moments and then drops the breadcrumbs along the way, and most of the time pays them off. I'm not saying he doesn't drop stuff because he's got into a bad habit of dropping stuff cold, but for the most part, when there's a big one coming, the Judgment Day on Raw at the moment, right? Because there's like a little development in the thing every week. All that does is the fantasy booking that you started 6 weeks ago. It's like building a little house. You know, you start with like, it's a brick by brick thing. And by the time you get to the point where the house is completely built, you've seen it pretty much all come together. And then it's like, oh, I've got my constructed house. Why is it not a house yet? And then SummerSlam happens and it's that one last brick. Hey, completed house. The weather's not coming in anymore, whatever it is. It doesn't feel stingy because you're getting a brick every week. So it doesn't feel like you've just had to wait 8 weeks or 12 weeks for that big moment. It's the moment that I knew was happening has actually just happened. So that little ingredient every week. Whereas I think when we were accusing Tony Khan of being stingy was because it was you're wasting these potential amazing matches while the roster are all together.
So much has been lost.
But yet, like, so many things feel lost. And I would say Triple H creates the opposite of that with his style, because barring something like an injury that might derail something, or The Rock when he comes in and wants to do something, it is pretty much week one. You know what? In 18 weeks from now, that thing you're thinking of today is going
Yeah.
to happen. Here's 17 more weeks of thinking about it. So I don't feel ripped off. An example of when he gets it wrong, by the way, the SmackDown tag division. I wasn't led to anticipate a TLC match. I wasn't led to get excited for these teams just brawling with each other. There was no sense of anger or storytelling or anything. So then the TLC match comes along and it was class. And I haven't thought about it since, you know?
Yeah.
And yet that's given away a TLC match on television. It's wow, amazing. Like, people would say that's not stingy. I think it is stingy because I haven't been given any reason to get excited about it in the 6 weeks leading up to it.
I think the stinginess is a big component of this because, I think, again, I don't want to keep saying, repeating talking points from insights I've tried to make, but Tony Khan, and yes, again, it's another one of those, he's putting his head down and he's just doing what people have tried to tell him for over the past 2 or 3 years. Another phase of this, get your head down and just be good, is right, I'm actually going to think about the value ex-WWE names can bring to me when I sign them. That's been reported. We probably aggregated it. There's this shift culturally within the company because, and I hope that actual signings brackets general slow down, and they seem to have done, actually. The choice paralysis.
Mm-hmm.
I remember that it first struck me that, this is a real problem. When Wardlow had the TNT title reign, people thought that was beneath him. He should be going for that world title. And then because he has a couple of matches where they're like, not that good. Meanwhile, there's 4 other wrestlers at a minimum just kicking ass on Dynamite. And you're thinking, can they not have the title? I think Tony Khan's greed and his lack of focus at times doesn't help build this sense of loyalty that WWE fans have towards the people they perceive as stars. It's something I'd probably rather tackle in like written essay format, this, but it is a very good question, and I think a lot goes into it.
Just quickly on that, what do you think WT means when they say turn cold in AEW way quicker than in WWE because of the culture of the fandom? What element do you think WT is grabbing at there? Like the culture of the AEW fan? Is it just I think sometimes view wrestling differently. You are a lot more, what have you done for me lately? Yeah. I'm like, I can't forget what you did for me ever. And there's pros and cons to both those ways of watching wrestling. Is that culture of the fandom? Is that the thing? Or WWE does use its marketing to promote my way of watching?
I'm not WT, so I don't know. Maybe it's... I think, in a way, AEW fans are probably a bit more discerning than WWE fans. I'm sorry, I think that's true. Like...
I think that's fair.
Jey Uso, for example.
It's all still wrestling.
Yeah.
And they could do to remember that, but I agree with that broadly.
Jey Uso, for example, if there's a wrestler who stagnates in the ring as much as he does or was repetitive, I think AEW fans would go like, well, where's the last 5 great minutes of a match that you've produced? So I don't know, maybe it is like...
We've bordered on a pancakes and waffles in the flesh over Jey Uso. And we haven't even meant to.
Yeah.
But we have, it's like that,
I know. It's just, again, I'd prefer, I wanted to answer it because I thought it was a great question. I hope we've scratched at it a bit, but I think it's more of a written down essay response. Maybe I'll get around to it at some point. Next question's from Kenty2K, who, thank you, by the way, for submitting all of these questions. I did forget to do that. I apologize. This is, again, Kenty2K. Who have you guys got as surprise entrance in the Casino Battle Royals? Cope, Darby, Jericho, Dakota? Dakota Kai seems like if there's one from the last however many waves of releases where I thought, to be honest, don't hurt me. Sacrilege corner. People love Dakota Kai. I understand why people love Dakota Kai. For me, she didn't get over and she was hot and cold in the ring. She got a vehicle to push her, damage control. The push didn't work. She didn't get particularly over. She had the odd highlight. Who doesn't? I'd like to see it. There was enough there once upon a time where you're thinking there could be a career renaissance. God knows it's happened in AEW countless times. Mm-hmm. Ricochet being the most recent example, of course, where why the hell not? Why the hell not? So I'd like to see Dakota Kai. I'd like to see Dakota Kai. Just, have you got it? It's always a bit of a shame when you just don't know.
Yeah.
Like that unfulfilled potential. Like, it's harsh, but like maybe you could fulfill it elsewhere. I'd always take a chance on a wrestler like that. In terms of the men's cope, well, I sure hope not. I'm not being funny. Like, the guy's a multi-millionaire. He should be if he spent wisely, and you expect he has. He just likes to live in the woods with his family and his coffee. And to be honest, he's got a life I would like. I don't care if he ever comes back. Do you know what I mean? I don't.
No.
I see no value in him. Didn't move the needle at all. I think he is completely overestimated, quite egotistically, how over he is by shortening his name to Cope, going on like he's this big hard man. Maybe he's a nice guy. So's my neighbor. Don't care about Cope. If he just decided to go to the Fed or just retire, it wouldn't bother me at all. Darby seems to be the one, like MGF and Briscoe being too preoccupied with themselves as the weeks build towards All In and then take themselves out of the casino, and Darby comes in, does some cool stuff, takes a beating, and then wins it. That would be the one for me. Jericho. Here's the thing about Jericho, right? More so than Cope, who I've got kind of no real... he cringes me out, but I don't hate... Maybe I do. Jericho, more so than Cope, who I think people are more like ambivalent towards. If you want to do something Mox adjacent of that meta heat, of that go away heat, but fold it into the fiction. Jericho versus Hangman Page, right? I'm sorry.
No, I like that.
At this point, if he's coming back contract season, he's slimmed down and he can look more like he's motivated or more like a star.
I think that's the AJ Styles Cody thing. It's the making of a man match rather than,
What's an aesthetics business. I've seen recent pictures of Jericho in a contract, and I thought, you son of a bitch. Why don't you do it all year round, right? Jericho and Hangman. And again, if you want to, I wouldn't necessarily do it too heavily, even though it makes all the sense in the world, like mining the historic failures of Hangman Page. What was the very first one in AEW?
Yep.
All Out 2019, revisiting that as a driver.
They never wrestled again, did they?
I don't. Maybe in.
So it'd only be a second time singles,
tags,
wouldn't it? Yeah.
Singles, yeah. Like the idea being of, oh my God, history's going to repeat itself. Combine that with not Jericho.
I like it a lot.
Like the whole point now is you want to get. We talk about brawls happened. Who cares? Episodic TV just kind of happens, and sometimes it's good and whatever. Like eliciting true emotion is real difficult. I think we're like nearing 40, very cynical. We do this job. It is hard for us.
Some of us are well into their 40s.
Yeah. It's one of those where for us, I do think eliciting emotion in the likes of me and him is quite difficult. Maybe it's more difficult for us than it might be for you watching or listening. Thank you, by the way, for doing that. That feeling of, don't even entertain the idea of giving it to Jericho. I don't care if he's in a contract, and then you start using headcanon, right? Of, oh God, he's going to want the belt.
Yeah.
Or if Tony Khan is debating giving him another 3 or 5 year deal for a fortune, you're going to have to justify that investment and put him on pay-per-views. Oh God, he's going to win the belt, isn't he? If you can get people thinking this, and so soon after the Death Riders, I understand it being a risk, but here's the thing about that. AEW's kind of made a rod for its own back with this Death Riders thing. We said from the start it was not fictionally viable because you can't save the company with a storyline. I mean, that's how you do it, but
yeah, that
can't be the express purpose of like, the company's going to be great when this is done with. People now think it will be. What do you do after the Death Riders? Because people are kind of thinking, it's going to be... Well, the product's great. The build to All in Texas has been great. God damn it. Utopia beckons. Does it?
Yeah.
So you might need to mind that feeling all over again. And I can't think of anyone better than Jericho winning this goddamn thing.
We both talked about Darby. It's a nice way for Darby. The fantasy booking that this inspires is what makes this gimmick so fantastic, by the way, because there really is no rules. And there's even to the extent of where the entrance...
I want to hear that actual reaction, to Judas. You have to bring Judas back.
You have to bring Judas back, right? So like...
It's like, oh, no.
That sense of dread, almost, that like Judas is playing. It's Cena in Madison Square Garden, isn't it? Pop! Oh, no.
Yeah.
Do we sing along? What is it, all of the above,
On the subject of Cena, the best example of this kind of heat is really theoretical. I cannot fathom why they didn't do Super Cena versus Streak.
Yeah.
in like the early 2010s or late 2000s where I was like, God, they love Cena way too much and Cena sucks and da-da-da-da-da. Why didn't they touch that match? Imagine if it was the most, they would do this. They give Cena everything else.
Yeah.
Don't give him this. He doesn't need it. Like that kind of like anxiety could be a way to get emotion.
No, I do like that. And the same vein as Dakota Kai, if you're talking in terms of released wrestlers, I wouldn't be opposed to get, and again, this is mostly in the gauntlet and then maybe work out if you want to use them on television in the aftermath or just have it as a bit of a, let's test the water here with a bit of a reaction. We've opened the gates to the world of wrestling. I wouldn't mind seeing a Shayna Baszler, Nixon Newell, Alex Windsor's just been signed, so I would expect her to maybe debut in that sort of thing. But again, for the value of an entrance and a moment and a, Jesus Christ, everyone gets in this. I think it'd be pretty cool if Ronda Rousey works it. And she did Ring of Honor that one time as a bit of fun.
Yeah.
It sits there as this novelty. Marina Shafir's well in now.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be a contract, but what you're after you're after a pop for an entrance and a moment and just in there swinging it. Like the ring would stop and look and go, what?
Yeah.
Ronda Rousey. Like that's a moment at the show, isn't it? You know? So I think there's like...
And we are trying to build the case of if they want All In to be WrestleMania, they need to take a big swing to try and put your most iconic moment on that show.
Yeah. Like McGuinness.
That was an All In moment, if you like.
It was, isn't it? Like
it was amazing.
Like you watch that back now, that pop and stuff, and like the music playing and everything, and the sheer disbelief. That's the kind of thing we're talking about. That's selling tickets to next year's show.
Yeah.
Because you've just created an expectation, and you're selling tickets to the next year and the next year. An all-in moment. You don't want to use the phraseology.
No. I mean, the will, sadly. Right. 4 more questions. We'll run through them reasonably quickly. This, the first one of the rest comes from Very Cool Video Man. Sup Dudas with the rumors. Malakai Black. You mean Malakai Black?
Maybe.
Malakai Black is getting a big push in WWE. Who should be first to turn their back on Gary Palliser Black? Thanks, Poopers. Don't turn your back on Malakai Black.
Well, he works for AEW.
Okay, let's move on.
Very Cool Video Man's got that one wrong.
Indeed. The next one comes from D Nowman. You said Seth never did well as a top guy in WWE. I disagree. When he first turned on the Shield, joined the Authority, got Money in the Bank and cashed in, I thought he was tremendous, didn't you? No, I didn't. And this was 2015.
Yeah.
2014, 2015, we are talking a full decade ago. He was very good in the ring pre every single thing that could have went wrong with his knee going wrong. Blistering to the point where amid NXT really starting to do something at an arena scale, amid New Japan's resurgence being well underway 3 years in, the acclaim is coming out of everywhere. I will say in 2015, Seth Rollins was rightfully in conversation for one of the best in the world. Genuinely.
He was the most reflective of a stylistic change in WWE.
Yeah.
Seth, because they're pushing him.
Yeah.
They actually believe in it as a style. It was him, wasn't it?
And like in the ring, blistering is how I would describe him, blistering. But outside of the ring, he was feuding almost exclusively with Corporate Kane on television. He was essentially cast as the stepchild of McMahon and Stephanie McMahon and Triple H. The actual episodic TV was not good at all. And then the slow burn face turn was just not good. Hence why Seth Rollins was pelted with chance of CM Punk when he made his big on crutches promo to say, no, I will get back in time to fight Triple H at WrestleMania. Then glorified mid-carder wearing Guy Fieri tights at WrestleMania 34. They try again in 2019 with Brock Lesnar. It fails dismally. He is the worst stand-up comic of all time. He cries when the Fiend is in the ring. This accelerates what was already a doomed, nothing happening babyface turn. He then is the worst and most tedious top guy heel, is the sermon giver. And then he decides, you know what? I'll just wear some outfits and get a sing-along tune. 2015, like, Go back and watch those Raws. If you've got any taste whatsoever, you'll turn off after one. Any taste whatsoever. He was always like, he was never a commanding presence, even when he was as close to Dynamite in the ring as he was ever going to get for me. What about you?
I'm a situational Seth guy, but I will say, in terms of his main event pedigree, he is probably the most obvious evidence I can find, or who I would be my go-to for the idea that WWE can make a top guy, in inverted commas, on their terms by simply telling you he is a top guy.
Yeah, that was Seth all over the place.
The guy never, that I'm aware of, you've got a better memory for this than me,
They could have put Tony Nese in that role and it would have went exactly the same.
he never moved the needle with any significance that he's got like this thing that argues his case, right? And I'm saying this is like the biggest Bret Hart fan, and it pains me that Bret Hart never drew.
Yeah.
So then you kind of rely on the quality of the work, and you rely on, right, what did Bret Hart do with the slate of opponents that was on offer to him at the time that weren't called Shawn Michaels? Because look at the sort of the lack of talent necessarily, and the matches that Bret Hart was able to put together as WWE's either his top guy or the top gatekeeper within WWE. He had great matches with everybody. Did Seth Rollins have great matches with everybody? I would argue that they were nowhere near as good as the matches Bret Hart had with people, and he had better opponents to have them with. Like, I don't know if I'm not putting words in Denauman's mouth here, but like, look at a match that got on in the building between Seth Rollins and Dolph Ziggler when they were main eventing. Was it the 30-minute Iron Man match?
Yeah.
And it's like, right, these are two people that like generations of fans were calling for these two to be in the main event slot, and the match itself was profoundly rejected.
Stunk the gaff out.
Good wrestling happening in front of fans that fans didn't even want to watch, and were telling them so because the emotional connection just wasn't there. So I would even argue that there has been points when he hasn't even had the matches to back it up. And why I'm situational is because I just think sometimes he does. I think he probably doesn't get enough credit. It's weird. He was asking for credit on Raw the week we record this, being like, who would have made Cody Rhodes the guy he is today without me? Well, in fiction, you lost 3 times.
Yeah.
But I would actually agree that trilogy was something Cody Rhodes needed, and Seth Rollins was the guy. Seth Rollins...
He's not the guy, though. He's
not the guy
who you beat, and fans think, oh, this person must be something if they're beating Seth Rollins.
He's the guy...
He is he is definitionally an enhancement talent.
He's probably the best enhancement talent ever.
He's not the best ever.
He's the best ever.
I don't know off the top of my head, mate, but I mean, I just thought a good bit, and then you have to like... He's an enhancement talent definitionally. He exists to enhance other people, and it's a skill, but I think it's just sheer force of will of WWE telling you, Seth Rollins himself rarely showing you that he's genuinely a compelling living legend of his day or whatever they're trying to get out with him.
I think there's been 10 great Seth Rollins matches, and it's staggering how many wrestlers haven't even got 10 great matches, and we talk about them as great.
Great. I don't want to go into a big Seth.
No, I'm not saying we could do the list now, but I think I could assemble 10, and I just think now there are wrestlers that held up.
Every wrestler has great matches now, or loads of them.
Well, but this is the problem. I don't think they do, and I think a lot of them are held up. Like, some will have 1 or 2 great.
What, in WWE or just everywhere?
Great. Maybe not like, I would need to go to a couple of Shield ones as well, don't get me wrong, but there has been at least 10 times I've thought there's a great. And like, I think a lot of wrestlers get that same halo around their heads and haven't got it. Like,
Seth Rollins' big match catalog is like,
it's not very big.
So much more inferior to the likes of, well, Kenny Omega, AJ Styles,
oh God, yeah.
Will Ospreay. But he's meant to be in. That's what I'm saying. He's meant to be in those.
I think he's mid-table, but I think a lot of people would rate certain other wrestlers above a Seth Rollins that haven't had anywhere near as great matches. You're talking like 1 or 2, and then a bunch of whatevers. Like
who, for example?
Who would I? Well, like, I've just used him, but like, you're going to think this bar's too low, but someone like a Dolph Ziggler. Or for a right now example, because like someone like a Daniel Garcia.
Yeah.
I think Seth Rollins had more great matches than Daniel Garcia. Yes, their careers are like, it feels unfair, right? But the way that someone like a Garcia is held up, it's just like, why are we not pushing
Seth Rollins has had the WWE machine behind him for a decade.
Totally, yeah. I'm not, this is why I'm situational. I'm not necessarily going to bat for him. I think he's got more. I understand why people love him. I get it. Beyond just being blinded by marketing.
They're blinded by marketing and they do what they're told. And I'm going to do what I'm told and answer your questions. And then
can we have another one on Hangman Page? Because I'm sure Miss talking about that guy. He's never had the promotional machine behind him. If only he got the muscle of a company behind him, then
do you want to go match with Hangman Page?
God no, he's miles better.
Yes, thank you. Then be quiet. Penultimate question comes from Hank McCoy. People are interested. And
thank God. Yes, I like Hank's
How many questions are there about what's your favorite Seth Rollins match, or what next for Seth Rollins? He's so interesting. People want to know, except they don't, because I didn't ask the questions, and I'm answering the ones that are written down in front of me. The penultimate one of which comes from Hank McCoy, and I've actually picked this for you.
Thank you. I know.
As a friend.
I like it as well.
Close friend, one of my best maybe at this point. Quiff hair CM Punk or slicked back hair CM Punk? Before you go 5 minutes on it, I'm going to say I like CM Punk with as close to a shaved head as possible. Because he's a political thug. And that's when he most closely
resembles a thug.
And that's when he most closely resembles his true self, and I can take it more seriously.
Between those two, I'm picking slick back. It was a great look, and I love battle knackered Quiff out of control. So slick back out of control. You know, and because the slick back allows a perfect entrance. But if he's gone 20 minutes with somebody, there's a bit over there, and there's a bit over there, and he looks like he's been in this fight.
I like when CM Punk, his hairstyle reflects where he's at mentally.
Yeah, it's
like
great.
When he gets, if you look back at when he's got that head shaved, it's 2013. I'm miserable, miserable here, and I'm better, and I'm defiant, and I'm getting really snarky and mean. And then he does it again when he comes back for Collision.
I watched this last week. That Collision first promo, like it's almost Steve Austin bicked. There's light shining off it. He's gone so short, you know.
It's like he gets real pissed off when he shaves it. So watch out. That's when they call him Mount Brooks now.
Mount Brooks. What's that?
Brooks. It's Vow's nickname for him because it's always dormant.
Like a volcano. Just
it's always dormant, but you know it's always going to erupt.
Do you know what I think the fittest CM Punk is? And depending on who you ask, this is a vast category. Fittest CM Punk for me. Remember when he got his head shaved by the Big Show, and then he wore the mask for a bit to try and protect himself.
Yes.
And then the mask came off, and it was like the straight edge society was Dunsky, and then like it would have been early days of the new Nexus, where like grew back and it was quite short and had like some blonde tips going on.
I like that.
Hottie with a body.
That's
CM Punk era, yeah.
No.
My diet soda, John.
Yeah.
That Punk.
Yeah. I mean, he's so hot.
He is.
He's so hot. Like, I do think that, you know, I would do things to him. Last question comes from Marcus Bistrom. I have probably butchered that. Hello! If Hangman wins at All In, you did. Ask and you shall receive.
That's
Was the Mox Death Rider run worth it? I'm seeing a bit of Death Rider revisionist history, and I'm wondering if you think this recent good bit will make the rest of it worthwhile. I'll still remember all the geeks lining up in the parking lot. That was absolutely pathetic. I was in such a mood when I saw that. It's like, you fucked it.
Yeah.
Again already. And I was, again, agenda vindicated. I said as soon as they did the first Dynamite after the Danielson angle, I heard Pat going, what's happened to this company? I never know. But all I know is we're here to save it. I instantly was like, oh, don't do this. Do not do the story. Oh, my God, do not do the story. Are you doing this story? And then, everyone looks like a geek. I will never think all of it was good. I laughed at a lot of it and was really annoyed by a lot of it. But so it's a two-part question. Worthwhile and good are two very different things. Like, I think it will ultimately be worthwhile because the generous take is, and you've seen so much evidence of it, we've talked about it week after week of, they're not doing this. They're no longer selling this from WWE. Like Tony Khan will not post anymore, really. Mm-hmm. There's been, and I wish there was more things off the top of my head, right? But if you think of, right, Tony Khan's not posting anymore, he's not trying to, like, get himself point scoring in this culture war. They're not doing that anymore. They're not really doing terrible Jericho stuff anymore. Like, they kind of stopped doing, it wasn't good, but he took himself a bit more seriously. And I wish there was more examples to mind off the top of my head of, they stopped doing this. They started doing this. Or they stopped signing every ex-WWE name for a pop. It's like they've purposefully and consciously sat down and thought, what do we need to do and what do we need to stop doing? And I think maybe the generous take is, if we tell the story of the companies coming back, and we'll set the date of the comeback for All in Texas, and Mox will be the person saying it's bad and needs to be saved. If, as we are, give ourselves till All In to put a proper plan in place for what company do we need to be. We need to change venues. We need to go to intimate venues. We need to stop doing so many backstage interruptions or silly angles or skits or hidden camera stuff. Maybe the whole thing has been, if we can get our shit together and make a proper plan, we can tell this meta story with Jon Moxley, and the idea is it'll all converge at the same time. I don't think that's a reach.
No,
I don't think that's a reach at all. The obvious problem is that some of the stuff that they should have been doing was not doing bad, stupid television, which they did involving Jon Moxley. And I think it is too much of a reach to say, oh, well, they're doing that bad on purpose, so you resent Moxley. No, I thought they just did some bad television. But when you're coming out of a rough patch of form, you're not going to instantly get great. I think there's genuinely been two things happening at the same time, and they knew at one point it was going to overlap. Sit down. Stop getting Edge to do raw speeches about Dynamite. Stop doing stupid TV. Stop doing daft stuff. Stop making critical, embarrassing errors. Stop booking people better. Start telling more compelling stories. Stop pissing about. And then we'll tell the story about how the company's coming back in the meantime. I think those two things have been designed to overlap since day one. Doesn't excuse the Death Riders. I would never, ever again watch it week to week. I don't think it excuses it. But I do think it was worthwhile. If nothing else, if you're Tony Khan, you've effectively cast a boogeyman in Jon Moxley for your ills. And then people have now gone, oh, if they just get rid of Moxley, AEW will be good. Oh, we're getting rid of Moxley. It's very cynical, not exactly great storytelling week to week, but I think it's been very shrewd, very well timed out, and good, no, worthwhile, 100%.
I think, other than the length of time, I still think the comparison with the Bloodline is apt, and I think time will be extremely kind to the Death Riders because it's really kind to the Bloodline, and half of that was crap. Roman Reigns held that title from 2020 to 2024, and at various points, the storyline was exceptional, and at various points, it was the worst, the absolute worst.
Most repetitive,
oh,
drab.
God. It's Brock Lesnar again. Are you joking me? The
Usos have interfered without reprimand. Yeah. Again, how does this keep happening?
Tanking a WrestleMania main event while having, between 37, the triple threat, and 38, Brock Lesnar. Could those two WrestleMania main events be further apart in terms of quality, for example? But there are others. Loads. Amazing. Transcendent television at points with Sami Zayn. The Elimination Chamber build, the ultimate payoff with Cody Rhodes.
This hasn't reached the highs of that, by the way. There's nothing as good as the Sami Zayn t-shirt angle with this.
No,
nothing.
The highs aren't as high, but I just think if you were to break it in two, you would say with the Bloodline, 50% great, 50% terrible, and fans will be very kind to it in their memories. And I think as long as Page wins, I think the Death Riders will go the same way. I think cope and drinking bleach and tying up the Rock and Roll Express.
Spike ruled, actually. That was as good as Sami Zayn.
Will be...
You agree?
Spike?
Moxley taking the bump.
Oh, no. Absolutely not. The best... He put a bag over Danielson's head. That's the closest you get to Sami Zayn's t-shirt angle.
Yeah.
The bag over, scary. Really scary.
Oh,
really different.
Great.
Really dark. Really... what is this? So the peaks will be remembered. The troughs will be forgotten about. That's how wrestling works. And AEW would be wise to market that as well when they market your memories of the Death Riders. So I think and in the case of the Bloodline, the ends did absolutely justify the means. So I would say the Death Riders probably will as well.
Again, NWO 1997, go back and watch that week to week. You will soon get bored. Yeah. The ends often justify the means. Wrestling has to be bad on purpose. This is one of my agendas for it to be good. Anyway. Thank you very much for submitting your questions. Thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you very much for Michael Hamflett for fielding your questions that must be answered. And if you want to get involved in the future or follow us for more great content, do so at WhatCulture WWE. Whilst you're there, you can follow my main man at
Michael Hamflett.
You can follow me at Sidgwick, if you're thinking, this is good, really earnest and analytical and to the point, but my God, I would love some self-indulgent tripe to go with it. The SmackDown preview should be available right now.
It's a Night of Champions combo.
No
preview.
Wrestle Culture today, unfortunately, but normal service should resume next week. But if you want more podcasts, we do them daily. So subscribe to WhatCulture Wrestling for daily wrestling podcasts, wherever you get them from. Thank you again for joining us, and we